Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Women Trailblazers. Our guest today is Marti Angel. Marti Angel is a powerhouse woman. She comes from the education field, but she is also a podcaster, a professional speaker. She's an author. She's an empowerer of Latina women, and she is an expert in coaching Latina women. Marti, welcome to our show.
Gracias, hermosa. I thank you so much for being here. And I just want to say this is reminiscent of the fact that you were one of my first guests on my podcast, I think a couple of years ago. And it was it's been such an amazing ride for me to watch you and be so successful. Not that you weren't successful, but thank you for having me. And gracias. Is this a bilingual podcast?
We can make it a bilingual podcast. It will
okay.
be today.
I just throw in the Spanish, but I'll always reinterpret it in English so your listeners can know.
Well, I already made an episode with someone who is not a Latina.
Okay.
She speaks Spanish almost as a native.
Oh, wow.
And we threw some Spanish words in there. She's learning Greek and she said some Greek words. And I mean, it was very fun. So we're going to make it our own this episode.
That's good.
Let's go ahead and start. I'd like to start with this question. How were you as a young girl? Because I want people to know you well.
Oh, how was I as a young girl? Okay, well, let me just say that I was diagnosed with probably at the age of 3.5 or so. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and they wanted to give me Ritalin right away. They told my mom, your daughter needs to take this medication. And lucky for me that my mom said, no, I'm not going to give her that pill. She's 3.5. I'm not, and you telling me that she's going to have to stay on it for her whole life, right? And so my mother's answer for that was she put me in dance, she put me in voice, and she put me in learning how to play the accordion and the piano. So I would come home from school and it was either dancing or singing or playing the accordion or playing the piano and then coming back. So all of my life I was, kept very busy, my mind has to have some sort of focus. And that's kind of the kind of child that I was. And then I have always been one of those creative types. I'm what I call an ambivert, right? So sometimes, which is very, very indicative, I'm sure as a medical professional, very indicative of somebody that's got, ADHD, is that they'll be, doing all of this, and then they need their quiet space in order to recover. And so I find myself and all my life, doing that. But in my quote unquote downtimes, I became a little entrepreneur at the age of 6. At the age of 6, I wanted the Susie homemaker oven for Christmas. And my mom says, if you make the money, you can buy it. And I was like, okay. So back in the day, I was looking through the backside of where all the ads were on my favorite comics, right? And I filled out this application. God knows why they sent it to me, but the way that they were doing is that they would send you the Christmas cards, and then you would send them the money, whatever it was, and then you could keep the rest. I didn't know what I was doing. I just filled out the paperwork and I sent it off, and they sent me my Christmas cards. And so there I was. I set them all up, very organized inside my little red wagon. And I walked down the street, knocking on doors, selling Christmas cards. So you can just imagine how many things that I've created over the years. And that's why people say, how do you do so many things? I don't know. My mind works that way. And one of the things that's really important is I don't really listen to others in terms of when they're trying to bat you down and say, oh, you can't do that. So that's a little bit about me.
And it's great. I am super impressed by this story of yours. And in a way, I can identify with when you say, when they say you can't,
Mhm.
I don't understand that. Like in my brain, I don't register that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's strange because, of course, being a cardiologist, you would think that, oh, you always had everybody opening. No, not really. There's a lot of people, especially those who know you closest. Sometimes people try to, I wouldn't say that they're trying to prevent you from doing something because they don't like you, but on the other hand, they don't want to see you fail, so they tell you not to do it, or
Right.
they don't want to, they don't want you to hurt your feelings, right?
Right.
And they tell you, no, it's not possible, or that's too hard, or you will never do that. So I never understood, why would someone tell anyone that they can't do something. To this day, if somebody tells me, oh, you won't be able to do it, well, why not? That's always my question. Why not? Tell me more. Why not? So
And
I
I
think
think,
you're like that.
yeah, so a lot of times, well, you being a cardiologist, when I was a child, both my brother and I were very young, and we were diagnosed with, I have a heart murmur and a mitral valve prolapse, right? And so I've had that all my years, all my years, all my years. But I was lucky to have a pediatrician that saw me through till I was 18, and he was like, and when I was dancing, and then at the age of 16 I became a fitness instructor, and he was always there. He was always there to tell me, you can do it. If it feels good, do it. If it feels good, do it. He was like the only one that would ever, always tell me that. And I was very lucky in terms of finding kind of doctors that have always pressed me forward. And then, then they came the time where they want to protect you. So I went to the doctor and I said, they're telling me that I can't have a child because of my heart. And uh, he goes, do you think you can have a child? He goes, girl, he goes, I've never seen anybody so active as you. He says, and we can do all the tests and everything. Your heart's fine. You can do it. And goes, why are you listening to somebody else?
Yeah.
And I think that's when I think what happens is that when we listen to somebody else, that's when we begin to doubt ourselves. That's when it's, and, if if you allow me, let me just tell a
Sure.
story that happened in my adult life. So one of the things that I was doing was I had stopped, I had quote unquote, sort of officially, unofficially retired, and I became an educational consultant for principals that wanted to leave on a high note, which means that the student scores had to be up, and lots of other factors that they had to do. So I remember doing that. And then I thought, well, I have some time because this school is a traditional school, so I have half of June, July, and August. I've always wanted to live in Hawaii. I am a yoga therapist. I'm a, 1000 ERT yoga professor. I had started my yoga school, and I wanted to do yoga retreats. So I put it together best I knew how, and it was very, very successful. And I did it year after year after year. And success is personal, because for me, at that point in time, success was being able to live on the island of Hawaii, Kona, on the Kona side, for free for a whole month by doing that, right? So that was success. Did I make a whole lot of money? No. But did I pay my rent and all my expenses, and then still gave powerful yoga teachings to the people that came? Yes. So that was success for me. And I think that when we talk about success, we need to reevaluate our version of success and stop hanging our hopes and our dreams on somebody else's version of success. right? But what I was getting to is about 4 years into it, the first time I did it, I had 2 people come. Second time I did it, I had 6. And it went on until I had 11. At 11, that was my cap. I knew it was my cap because there was no way that I was going to be able to give more of me to more than, 11, 12 people at one time. And I was getting ready to do it again the following year, and somehow I bumped into a coach who does, who coaches all of these retreat things, right? Retreats, all kinds of retreats. She teaches you how to do retreats. And so I figured, okay, I can make mine better. I'm gonna buy into her coaching program. The first thing she said is, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be doing it until you know exactly how to do it.
Wow.
And everything that I had done, she was like, oh no, you did that wrong. Oh no, you did that wrong. Oh no, you should do it this way. And then I froze.
This is
So
heartening,
that was
right?
the end of my yoga healing retreat career because I listened to her. I believed her and her community saying, you cannot do this if you don't have all of this behind you. And and then the fear set in. And then the doubt set in. And I can just remember just tumbling down, 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 and feeling so unmotivated, so depressed, all because someone told me I was doing it completely wrong. So I listened to her, right? Because she was doing supposedly 7-figure events, right? And so I was doing it wrong because according to her, I wasn't gathering that many people. But I thought I was successful until I had met her. Well, after that, that was it. So, I always advise people, we are all on a different journey. We all have different experiences. We all have different values, and we all have a different understanding of what success is. And when you listen to others tell you nope, and they bat you down, don't let them.
Absolutely.
Don't let them.
I think
Find somebody else. I should have known.
but you were doing something different and you were successful in your own way because you make your own
Yeah.
success. You define your success. You
Yeah.
never had an intention, from what you tell me, you never had an intention of having more than 11 people doing
Yeah.
a retreat with you. And you got there and then you decided to stop. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
For her, maybe that was a failure if
Yeah.
she had done that, but it wasn't for you. So
Yeah.
it was never a
Exactly.
failure.
Yes. And it's so important, really, even so, when I looked around, I've been around the block and more because, when I've been on many, virtual summits and things like that. And I always look around and I don't see a lot of us having the beautiful Latina faces, the oops, that your Spanish word, se me salió.
Yeah, así.
Right? Because, you're thinking so quickly and it's like, and when, and it's like, rather than keep saying, I'm talking about la mesa, okay? Esa mesa que está allí, and it's like the table that's
The
right there.
table
But
was
in the
there.
moment, my brain is thinking in Spanish and my mouth can't speak English fast enough. So, it's like
That's funny because I in different groups, I go around different groups, and I met this person from the Middle East recently.
uh-huh.
And someone in that group, this person said something about people with limited English, and I'm like, is she talking about us? But of course,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be confrontational. She was talking about something that hopefully didn't apply to us, and I take this person by their side and I say, you and I, we don't have limited English. The problem is that we have better words in a different language, but
Yes.
these people do not know these words and we cannot use them with them.
Yeah.
So it's not, and I would like people to know that, because whether you are Latina, whether you are Middle Eastern, Asian, whatever you identify yourself as, don't let anybody tell you you are wrong when they don't have your experience, they don't have your knowledge, they don't have your preparation. Just like you express in your yoga journey, right?
Right.
You had that experience and you were successful in your own way.
Yeah.
And being from any country, being from a different place, and you cannot express fully in the whole sentence in the English words. Yes, you have to communicate, that's important, but please know that there are expressions that are better in different languages, and sometimes we are stuck, like you were saying, la mesa, because for you la mesa is the table, and it's
Right.
it's just much quicker in your brain. And I know you're fully bilingual, we're both fully bilingual here, but there's still better words in a different language that we cannot share
Hmm.
with people who do not have as an expansive knowledge as ours. So it's okay.
It's, yeah.
And it's
It
okay if you do it that way.
and it is okay. I love that you're going that way, because it is okay, because so for so long, speaking Spanish here in the US, I mean, you were batted down. Spanish was my first language. My parents were educated in Mexico and they came over here and they spoke Spanish. So I taught Spanish to my kids. That was their first language, even they were born here as well. And I can remember, always being told, no, don't speak Spanish. I remember I got in trouble when I was in kindergarten because my kindergarten teacher didn't allow me to speak Spanish. So one day she said to me, "You keep speaking Spanish." There was a little girl that I did not. My mom put me in school, but I wasn't an English speaker just yet. But I pick up very quickly, luckily. And so I started speaking English very well, but this other little girl did not speak so well, and she was having an issue with transition. So I would speak to her in Spanish and I would translate what the teacher was saying. So one day the teacher says to me, "I told you not to speak Spanish. Well, now you can't go to the bathroom." I needed to go pee so bad.
What's wrong
I
with
needed
her?
to go pee so bad. I was like, so I ended up, little 4-year-old here. I ended up peeing my pants because she wouldn't let me go to the bathroom because I spoke Spanish. And it was like such a taboo. You're not allowed to speak Spanish. So all through, and when I was a teacher, I became a teacher and I was teaching multiple subjects just because I had so many, minors. And I remember walking in to a setting where the principal says to me, "Even though you're teaching ESL, you're not allowed to speak Spanish." And I said, "That makes absolutely no sense. You want me to teach English to these, high schoolers that have just come, that are just come from wherever they came from, and they're learning English, but you don't want me to speak Spanish, if Spanish or French." I had a French young lady, and I do speak French as well. So then, it was like, I can't explain in their mother tongue. "Oh, no, you can't because you will be written up." And I'm going like, that sucks. Big time sucks. And then there was this teacher that was right next to me, and she did not like me. I was this young whippersnapper, kind of straight out of college, and she had been there for years, and she heard me speak Spanish. Well, so what does she say? She goes to the principal and tells him I'm speaking Spanish. So he comes over and he goes, "You're speaking Spanish." And I go, "So you speak Spanish too?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I don't do it in the classroom. You were told not to do it in the classroom." I said, "Fine. You tell me and give me some good proof as to why I cannot make this transition, this language transition for these students easier. Why is it that you want to force these kids to learn English without giving them a why, without giving them a reason? Why do we say it this way instead of the other way? Why do we say it like this in Spanish? Why is everything kind of switched over?" it's like, it makes no sense. So I said, write me up. Write me up if you need to, but I'm going to teach what's going to be best for the students. And I remember I was written up.
You were a rebel.
I was written up.
Tell me, and I know you have a background in education. Tell us a little bit about your professional background. Where did you start? Were you always a teacher, or how did this happen to you?
So, no, I wasn't always, as a matter of fact, my undergrad is in business. Okay. So I started out, I was a professional dancer at the age of 12, right? I got picked up by Amalia Hernandez Ballet Folklorico, and I was there every summer. I was in what she called her summer group, right? And so I started to go there and really, just learn dancing. So, and then my dad put his foot down and said, no. He says, I want you to learn business because, you can't, you know, always do this. So instead of making that your major, instead of a dance major, you're going to make it your minor, and you're going to do business because you're going to help me in my business. He was a contractor, right? And so I went and I started in business and I fell in love with it. I was in marketing and management. Back in the day, they combined the two. Right now they're separate, but back in the day, they combined the two. And so my undergrad was in business. And before I actually went into business, I realized there was one day when the professor said, are there any entrepreneurs in here sitting with me? And I thought, I've always been in love with that word. In fact, I remember like I was 6 years old when I was pulling my little red wagon. One of my pastimes was learning new words. So I would take the dictionary and every week I would write 5 new words, big words, because I wanted to impress people with big words, right? And I would write them down and I would write their meaning, and then I would write them in a sentence. Then I'd go and practice on my friends, right? And they were like, why are you talking weird? But that's kind of how I did. And so I found the word entrepreneur and I thought, ooh, that sounds so. What if somebody says to me, Marti, you're an entrepreneur, And then I started to just behave like that, right? And I fell in love with that. And then I realized that I was an entrepreneur because I was at the age of 12, I was teaching quinceañeras how to do waltzes. Why? Because I had, for the longest time been a dancer, and it was just easy for me to teach quinceañeras how to do, waltzes. My mom was a floral designer, so she would do the flowers for the quinces. And then my mom and my dad were also caterers, and they would cater for that. And so I was around a lot of entrepreneurial or a straddler. Mom was always working and always, doing her side gig as well. That was, and so I grew up knowing this, that you could always have a side gig. You didn't have to sit around, which was important for me being ADHD, that I could do something. So that's where I began to do and try all of these things that I would just, oh, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to try this. And that's how my life unfolded. And then so I was going to go back on the stairs. I was there at San Diego State. I was going to go into the business department and I was going to go in for my MBA, right? And then since I was always doing networking and I was always doing events for fundraisers for the school for the Latinas back in the day, I just thought, scholarships for, the Latina, scholarship for the Latino students. There weren't a lot of scholarships. So I got involved in that kind of thing. And then I realized, that I should probably get an MBA in business because my other businesses that I started was I was helping doctors and dentists, the medical professionals. I was helping them how to hire staff that would actually not rob them blind, right? Because many doctors out there are, and dentists, and I started with my chiropractor, right? I would find out that I would study it and I would see that their back office people were doing things that I know were not in alignment with the values of my friend, the chiropractor, right? And so I just asked him one day, I said, hey, how would you mind if I came in and I said, I'm doing a project, which was a lie, right? It was a white lie. And I'm doing a project on research on helping people with their customer service, doctors with their customer service and maybe grow their practice a little bit more. So he said, fine. So I started to do that. And then I became the hatchet woman. So it was so weird because then I wasn't doing any marketing, but it was word of mouth because what was happening was I would go in and I would clean house. If somebody was not in alignment with the values of the doctor, then I would clean house. So I was the one that would say, okay, thank you very much. You've got 90 days to do this, this, and that, and to spruce up your customer service. We want people coming into the doctor. We want people happy. We want the stress level to go down, and we want the doctor's stress level to go down, because what we don't understand is that if doctors are stressed, imagine how stressed we can be because energy transfers. And so that's how I started there. And then, it was one of these things where I just get an idea and I do it. I mean, I figure out a way and I do it. I don't wait for somebody to tell me, hey, Marty, you got to do it this way. Do this, do this, do this. No. And so that was successful for a while. But then, like I said, I wanted to get a higher degree. So I went in and I was going to get a master's degree, MBA. And I was at the stairs of the business department. Coming out of the business department were two friends of mine that I had networked with in terms of getting people to have scholarships, because I was doing the side gig of the doctor thing and still being a teacher. So they railroaded me and they said, no, we need Latinas in education and the top of education and get all of this, come over here and get a master's degree in educational administration and blah, blah, blah. And that's a business too. And I was like, I don't know how it's a business, but okay. And it was like weeks that they would just not let me go. And so finally I ended up, instead of an MBA, I got an educational administration master's degree, right? And so that's I've always been in love with education and business, being married and realizing that they're one and the same. Running a school taught me that I was in the business of education. So
because you were
I
also a
hope that
principal, school
answered your
principal.
question.
Oh, yes, yes. Because you were also a school principal as well.
Yes.
Right. So, you've had a long business trajectory. You've had this long, but it's been different businesses throughout your life.
Yeah.
What challenges or what lessons can you share with us that you've learned? Anything in particular strikes your mind, or something that every so often comes back at you that you say, you know what, this happened to me so long ago, and I keep remembering this. Is there anything that you've always remember that a challenge you overcame or an obstacle you overcame?
Yeah, so the one thing is that be careful who you listen to. Be real careful who you listen to. Um, and and it's okay to embrace your culture. Most recently, in 2017, which is not really recently, but recently, in 2017, I ventured out into the social media world, right? And I thought, okay, being an educator, I want to make sure everything's right. And so I went and I hired a coach. I hired the coach, right? Not going to name names because it wasn't a very positive experience because I got the same reception. She told me, do not tell anybody and do not brand yourself as the Latina business coach. You will shoo people away. And so what I realized is that all of my years of living, I've always been kind of pushed into not embracing my cultural background, hiding my my Spanish, speaking English without an accent. I actually took a speech class to get rid of my accent, if you will, my Mexican accent.
Yeah.
So, and it was like, no, you cannot do that. So I would say I've learned over the years to embrace your culture, to not just embrace it, but, hug it, love it, and give it some life. Because when you resist it, then, like I say, everything you resist will persist. When you resist it, you'll always get slaps in the face, showing you, things that don't align with you. And when we're out of alignment, whether you're running a business, whether you're running a school, whether you're running, you're working, maybe you're what I call an employeepreneur, maybe you're a leader in your field. What ends up happening is that if we don't embrace it, that turmoil inside of you can take you down a negative path. So it's so important to check in with you. I always check in with me and, and how am I feeling and how is it landing with me? And then go forward with blinders on, in a sense, right? Don't worry about, oh, they're making money over here doing this, and then you try that. And what ends up happening is you keep chasing that dangling carrot. But if it's not really aligned with your values, for as much as you chase it and you finally get that carrot, you bite into it and realize, ooh, that doesn't taste so good, right? Doesn't feel so good. So that's what I would say is like, embrace who you are, trust in yourself, and try it. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work, right? And I think that's so important.
I agree with you. I think what you're saying is be true to yourself. In the way that I see it, you can't give what you don't have, and you cannot be what you're not. You don't try to be something different, because regardless whether it's your culture or who you are as a person, who you are as a friend, even in your family, in your relationships.
Yes.
If you're not someone who, I don't know, who gives hugs, for example, don't be with the huggers. Don't be, just like you say, you're an
Right.
ambivert. As an ambivert, sometimes you can be in the crowd, but sometimes you need to take a step back and be with yourself, recharge, and then come back. So you have to understand that. Understand who you are. I think you're telling people, let's understand who we are. Let's be true to ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's always someone that can be your client, can be your student, can be the one who actually learns from you.
Yeah.
Because again, you can't be for everyone. But if you have it very clear, just like you said, you can be successful with, in your case, with your 11 people group. I'm sure that was a very rich experience for you, regardless of what other people would say.
Right.
Your experience is different.
And the other thing that I would say is that I've learned not to be so hard on myself. And because for a long time, I would look at everything I hadn't done everything I couldn't do, everything that, that I wasn't good at, instead of embracing what are you really good at. And this is a journey that will not stop. That self-love and that self-love and self-loathing as an entrepreneur, even as a person and as an ADHD, person, it's always going on. One day I love myself, the next day I hate myself. One day I love. So learning that that's the roller coaster that I'm on is so important for me to stop and take a look. The other day, for example, just maybe a week ago, I was like, oh, look at, I'm, going to launch this membership course. And what if nobody shows up for my master class? And what if I don't do it right? And what if my ads are not the right way? And all of these what ifs. And then I stopped and I said, okay, you're going down that rabbit hole that you think that, or that you say you teach, you coach others not to do, you're doing it. So let's take a step back and what have you done well? And it was like, so I go back to all the lives that I have touched as an educator, as a teacher, as an algebra teacher. Nobody cried more than me. They used to call me the weepy algebra teacher because I would cry every time I would see that light bulb go on in my students, because everybody came in. There was not one student in my 12 years of teaching college algebra. There was not one student that walked in and said, "Hey, I love math. I love algebra."
That doesn't happen.
And so it was like, okay. And, and then even when it was parent night, parents would be afraid to come in and say, I don't have like the algebra plague or something, you can come in. But what was happening was I needed to say to myself, look at all those kids' lives that you touched by helping them learn something that they thought was unattainable. You actually shattered that negative veil that they had from themselves, saying, I can't do this. Right. So we need to constantly remind ourselves, and I journal. I recommend journaling. I journal, what have I done right? What are all my successes? I still have kids that and I call them all kids. I still have kids that find me on social media and they go, Professor, you look so good. You're doing so well. And I just wanted to stop by and say hi. And it's like, oh, see, I did. I am successful. I've touched so many lives. And it goes with my values. It goes with, when people say, well, what is it that you want to do? Just yesterday, at the networking event, somebody said, well, what do you do? And when I was saying this, I said, let me share with you, here's what I do. I'm a business coach, and I help you, Latinas, entrepreneurs, learn the platforms you need in order to succeed and get out of overwhelm. And I said, but my biggest thing is that I envision that when I die, on my epitaph, it's going to say, because of you, Coach Marti, I didn't quit. And I thought, that is where, that's where the success lies. It's like, okay, so I'm a champion for the underserved, the underrepresented, and the underprivileged. Have been always. When I was teaching, they would tell me, you want to go over here where all the, elite, the top-notch kids are over here, or do you want to go over here where the kids are, or Hispanic and this and that, and they're not doing so well? I said, over there, put me over there. So, that's so important, is like, remind yourself of all the good that you've done, because I guarantee you have done more good than bad. But the way our brain is wired, the amygdala will always show you the negative. Will always tell you, you didn't do it right. You didn't listen, or it didn't come out like hers, or whatever, right? And so we need to be always, always on a daily basis. You know how you salt your food, or you use that chilito. For me, it's the
Your
Valentina. I
condiments.
cannot
You
eat
gotta give it
without
a good flavor.
Valentina.
Yeah,
So you have to always, always, always remember to sprinkle the love into you daily.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard nowadays with all these access to social media and comparison, because it's so easy to compare what people present, but not everybody's presenting. Well, I don't know if anybody is presenting exactly how things are going for them. So they're just showing us
Right.
what they want us to see, which most of the time
Exactly.
is not real. So
Right.
comparison is a thief of joy. And Marti, you have been amazing. This has been, I've loved interviewing you. Your story is great and so rich. If people want to contact you, how can they do it?
I'm everywhere in social media the same way. I purposely did that. So it's at Marti Angel _ELC for Empowering Latina Coach. You can catch me, you can write me an email at my website, martiangel.com. Yeah, you can, I do a lot of article writing. Right now, I've just been doing some extra article writing. So I'm on every social platform. I'm also on, a lot of blog sites because I'm writing blogs specifically for the Latina, mujer-preneur, like the coin term. And then you can also catch me on the podcast, Mujer de Éxito Unbounded, where I give tips and tricks. I call them tips and tricks to make your entrepreneurial life a little bit better. And maybe there's something there that you could learn. So you can contact me there as well. And you've been on my podcast. Gracias. That was amazing. You're
Gracias.
also,
Thank you for
I'm
having me
sitting
there as
here
well.
going like, oh my God, I'm going to be interviewed by a cardiologist. She's amazing. And she's a speaker coach, and she's this and she's that. And I told my husband, I said, oof, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stand in her shadow, but
Oh,
here I am.
don't say that. You have your own light. You're amazing. This has been
Yeah, and
great, Marti.
I'm also way older than you, so
There you
you
go.
know.
You have an advantage.
And let me speak about that. I have been an ageist, so I'm going to tell everybody, all your listeners, stop being a self-ageist. Stop it, because there's a lot of women out there, and I'm switching over. There's a lot of women that are coming to the age where they're at between 50 and 55, but from 55 on, they're thinking, ya estufas, because, as we say, ya estufas, ya no puedo hacer nada. You can't do anything. Ya estoy muy vieja. I'm too old. And I'm going to say to you what we always say in Spanish: viejos los cerros. Old are the mountains, not you.
There you go. And they still
So
turn green every year.
yes, and they keep coming back, and
Coming
they'll
back.
be there, and the more they're there, the more majestic they become. So I would say swim in your majesty.
There you go. I love it. I love it. I love you. You have been amazing. You're always great. If you guys need empowerment, if you're a Latina, please go visit Marti at her website. Find her on social media. She is amazing, a true powerhouse. And don't forget, if you like this episode, please leave us some comments and subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the notification bell so that you can get an alert when the next episode comes out. It's been great having you, Marti.
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'll see you
Thank
all
you.
next time.
Namaste, mi amor.
Namaste.